Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. Today we are here at the Emergence Investment Conference and I'm joined by Chris Titley from Sub 11 who's joining us today as a panelist to discuss venture capital and private equity investment trends. He has a wealth of experience in the technology sector and a background in public equities. Chris brings a very unique perspective to our discussion. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Rhythm. Pleasure to be here too.
Amazing. Now, let's dive right in. So could you share some insights into the current trends that you're observing in the venture capital and private equity investments, particularly within the technology sector?
Sure. Yeah, it's a fascinating period at the moment within technology and funding. At the moment, we've gone through this sort of 2020-21 hype period where there was sort of growth at all costs from firms throwing money at companies. Now we've gone to this sort of more capital efficient model where people are looking at profitability as metrics. They're looking at growth metrics, but also in a slower way, but also a more mature way. So it's a really interesting conundrum we're seeing. We've also got equity markets sort of peaking as well, with larger technology companies performing very, very well, but some of the smaller technology companies not going so well. So completely different to what it was a couple of years ago. Fascinating how it plays out and lots of trends to talk about.
Amazing. That's great, Chris. Now, with your experience in public equities, what shifts have you noticed in investor preferences or strategies when it comes to emerging technology investments over the years?
Yeah, look, it's again a really interesting topic when it comes to interest rates. We've seen over the last probably coming up to 2 years now a substantial rise in interest rates up to where we are now. I think it's been 13 or 14 interest rate rises. So going back a couple of years, you're probably seeing people take some risk and actually look for equities that have growth prospects and not worrying about income and not worrying about dividends. Now we're seeing a different market where income can be sought after through bonds and through bank accounts where family offices can get 5% now instead of getting nothing nearly 2 years ago. So there's been a bit of a shift away from technology companies, and you've seen some of the smaller technology companies are substantially lower than their all-time highs. That's not to say that they're going out of business. It's just that there was a bit of a frothy period with technology stocks per se. But if you look at the big end of town, like Spotify has almost doubled, I think, or even more than doubled. Netflix, Uber reached an all-time high. Some of these big tech companies and Microsoft and all the AI that's going on are seeing all-time highs. But at the smaller end, it's a little bit tricky. So some of these companies have to either reinvent themselves or become, I suppose, growth profitable companies, not just growth companies.
Well, very well said on that point that, now people don't want to take as much risk as you would see it previously. That's a very good point. Now, Sub 11 focuses on assisting ASX listed businesses with investor content curation. So could you elaborate on the importance of effective stakeholder messaging in today's investment landscape?
Yes, I'm a little bit biased on this topic. So I think storytelling is actually very pivotal and very critical and a lot of touch points from companies to keep relevance. So what investor content is really taking those ASX announcements that are out there that are generally in a PDF or they do a webinar or they do broker meetings and turning them into different types of mediums, whether it be blog posts, shorter form videos or podcasts that people can listen to and understand the company through different mediums. So if the company has a really good result, and we're in the middle of reporting season right now, by the way, so there's lots of results happening, they can actually get some of their investors or potential investors to understand the business in an easy to understand way, a shareable way, and within a reasonable time frame, as opposed to reading maybe the whole PDF document. So investor content for me and storytelling is critically important, particularly some of those stocks and companies that we mentioned where they're potentially way off their all-time highs, but actually going really, really well. But they need investor interest. They need people to understand their stories. And people just don't read as much PDFs as they used to be. They're busier people. They read tweets. They read shorter form text messages. So why not, translate that into shorter form content for ASX listed companies? And that's what Sub 11 does.
That's a very good point. It's like people's attention span is just reducing. Like as the time goes by, it just let's say
it's an overload of information.
Yeah,
I think it's like
exactly.
you can access the New York Times, you can access anything now, the Wall Street Journal. Whereas in my early broking days, it was really just the desk had all the information, what the gold price was, etc. And the democratization of information has made it available. So cutting through that and actually getting attention through either shorter form video or other different channels, or getting an email or a push notification about the result, I think is the future for companies to actually touch their shareholders and say, hey, we're going okay.
Yeah, that's very interesting indeed. Now, as someone who's deeply involved in content creation and hosting live events, what do you believe are the key elements that can make an investment pitch or presentation very compelling to investors?
Oh, that's a great question. I think there's lots to unpack there. I think the introduction, the short punchiness to get to the point about what problem you're solving, I think is critical. And what the problem is, like you might have a problem that no one really understands, but you need to explain it to people. I think that's good. So there's different lines of thinking. Are you a niche player in an industry which can maybe generate 0.5% difference on billions of dollars, maybe what banks are looking for? Are you going to change the world and be a new category? Something like a buy now, pay later, years ago was a sort of a category creator. Or are you somewhere in between? Are you domestic focused? Are you globally focused? All those points to get across early, to get across succinctly and clearly. And I think that's the tricky part for some of these startups and emerging tech companies is to really understand what they do, who their customers are, how their revenue model works. And then, the new paradigm is how they're making money, which has always been a paradigm. But the shift, I suppose, was like, what's your revenue? Now it's like, what's your profit? But getting those clear, articulated messages around the market, the size, the opportunity in a really short form, I think is the way to do it these days, because people's attention spans are very short at the moment, right? And it's not deep diving and listening to or watching a 20-minute YouTube anymore. It's about shorter form, grabbing the attention and going, wow, that's an interesting story.
Literally a couple of seconds that you get to grab someone's attention.
Yeah,
these
people
days.
scroll up and scroll down, scroll left, right, and center. But if you can see
Very
something
true.
that's interesting from an investment point of view and a pitch point of view, I think that will capture people's attention too.
Amazing. That's great advice, Chris. Now, given your background, what advice would you offer to startups or scale ups that are seeking venture capital or private equity funding for the first time?
Yeah, they've got to be resilient. They've got to have some patience, and then refine the story and know who your investor is. There's no point in sort of going a blanket approach, going, oh, I think X firm will like us, or because they're big and they've got lots of money, they'll like us. But if there's a really, and I say this to some of the startups, is like really, who is your Nirvana investor? Who is the person that you would love or group that would love to invest in your company, and why? Right, and if you can work that out, work from here down to that, as opposed to going, oh, there's a list of VC firms, I'm just going to blanketly call them, which can work, right? But it's a tougher market at the moment. But if you're going, actually, I want someone with industry expertise, someone that can add value from a corporate governance point of view, perhaps, or a strategy point of view, and someone that's maybe been involved in my industry, that's where I'll start, and go and find them first. And if they say no, work your way down. But don't go work your way up to go, oh, well, finally I found the right investor 8 months down the track, but I could have had that thought and understanding initially.
Amazing. That's great advice, Chris. Now, before we wrap up our interview today, being here today at the Emergence Investment Conference, you have any key takeaways that you could share with the audience?
I just think from an investment trends point of view, it's not all doom and gloom. Like there's a fair bit of doom and gloom when it comes to early stage investment and returns and angel investing and venture capital. But the good companies will attract capital. It's a cycle. Cycles happen. They might happen longer than people think. So at the end of the day, all is not lost. And if you can come up with an idea that, you can see scale, you can have good people, you have good investors, all is not lost. And I think that the message today is it's not doom and gloom everywhere. Look at equity markets. Equity markets are at an all-time high. We've got property at high. Like the economy's going okay. Obviously there's, high interest rates and there's a cost of living crisis, etc. But, broadly speaking, from an investment mandate point of view, there will be opportunities. And if it doesn't come straight away, you just got to keep persisting.
Amazing. Now, Chris, before I let you go, how's your experience been being here at the event today?
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a buzz and a bit of a vibe at the moment. We're in the lunch break. We can hear people networking and collaborating, and the sessions have been really entertaining, and the pitches as well. So it's really nice to be here on a Sydney day. I don't know how many people are here, a couple of hundred or whatnot, but certainly it's been nice to network, nice to catch up with some familiar faces, and also nice to meet some new faces and enjoy the networking. And looking forward to the networking session this afternoon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chris. This session has been really insightful, and we really thank you for being here with us today and sharing your wonderful insights with the audience. And to the viewers watching, thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you all in my next interview. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.